I think it's fair to say that the desire to make the most of our time is at the very core of being human. I mean, since the beginning of humanity, we've had systems all centered around productivity. There are times for doing certain things, and there are also certain expectations of how those things should be done in order to get the best results that benefit either the individual or, a step further, the whole society. To me, it's almost like it's not human to not have the urge to be productive. I mean, maybe even animals have the need to be productive. I don't know. But I mean, why not, you know? Like, you have to be productive in order to survive. But why are we so obsessed with being productive? The bottom line is, we recognize the brevity of it all. Like, life is short, and we don't always have as much time on our hands as we think we do. So we have the need to want to make each moment count, or make as many moments as possible count. Obviously, there are different degrees to which one can be productive, but here I'm just thinking of the day-to-day dealings and tasks. From an early age, the concept of being productive and making the most out of my time was drummed into my head very frequently. And of course, that's why there were rules like you can't use your phone during the school week, you have to go to bed early at night so you can wake up feeling refreshed and ready to go about the next day. And in some extreme annoying cases, you have to spend 2 hours every day, on vacation by the way, to work on homework. Not that there's anything wrong with that, I'm just kidding. But these rules were in place to make me productive, even when I didn't want to be or didn't know how to be productive. As I grew older, I began to realize that in the grand scheme of things, I don't really have a choice if I want to be productive or not. I have to be to survive, it almost feels like. And I don't know how exactly I feel about that. There is a lot of pressure from society to be productive. If you're not doing something that seems to someone else to add value or to be worthwhile, then you're automatically judged as wasting your life. And I think that conclusion is a very unreasonable one, to be honest. And it's true, we do often tend to waste our time not doing things that really add value, but I don't think those things are always bad, because once in a while a break is necessary. And to me, a break can mean, just not doing anything for an extended period as long as you need to recharge. I don't think you have to be doing something constructive while on your break for it to be deemed as having spent your time wisely, even during break. To me, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. I always hated when I would work for hours on my schoolwork, and the one moment I decide to take a break, then I'm scolded for not using my time wisely or playing too much. Being productive is not easy. Like, one slip up could just mess up your whole flow. It requires a lot of discipline, and we have to make a conscious effort to make sure we're doing it successfully. But the issue for me is that I don't think we realize how easily we can fall into the trap of thinking being productive equals doing many things. Socrates, one of my favorite philosophers, said, "Beware the barrenness of a busy life." Life generally comes with a lot of stress, and although it isn't optional, I think there's a significant amount of it that can be self-induced. And I know it's easier said than done. We don't just wake up and say, hey, I'm not going to be stressed today. It doesn't work that way. But I think we have more control than we give ourselves credit for in certain situations. You don't have to feel completely exhausted at the end of the day to have had a productive day. You don't have to work 24/7 to have been productive. And you don't necessarily have to feel accomplished to have been productive. Of course it helps to do so, but I don't think you have to. Ultimately, the problem for me is when we begin to take on too much, more than we can handle. And that's when I think it becomes a bit of an obsession. I have definitely gone down that rabbit hole before. You should ask high school me. All the busyness can easily lead to being unproductive because we're just trying to do so much all at once. We're not focusing enough time on just taking things slow and doing everything we're doing well. And this is why I subscribe to a little a day thinking. Obviously, when I was younger, my parents, teachers, guardians, whoever, would always emphasize the whole concept of doing a bit a day. Now, they were saying this for the purpose of making the information I was learning stick. But right now, I'm saying it for the purpose of taking care of yourself. I find it helpful to think of my days as packages, right? Like, let's say every day has 3 packages, for example. And what I find that helps me is making sure that I unpack everything I have to for today's boxes, and don't worry about tomorrow's boxes, but instead Focus on today's and don't open tomorrow's boxes until you're completely finished with today's boxes. Obviously, I know these analogies are like easy, like very easy and very beautifully said and beautifully received. But it's another thing to actually put them into practice. And I'm not perfect at doing this either, but this is the way I think that kind of helps me to zero in on how productive I need to be in a day. Don't overcrowd, don't overcomplicate things when you don't have to. Do what you can and do it well. To paraphrase what Plato said in his discourse on the soul, it's better to do things a little at a time and do them well than to do a lot of things and do them badly. So, is it possible to be overproductive? And if so, is it a bad thing to be overproductive? I'm still wrestling with this because I don't even know if I'm using the right term here. But I think the issue is not so much being overproductive as it is the effect that trying to be overproductive has on the body and the mind as well. It takes a toll on us, and we start giving ourselves these excuses to feel better about the situation. We're like, yeah, well, even though I'm not feeling too good, I'm supposed to be productive anyway, so it's all worth it. I personally have found that I really tend to forfeit my well-being in my pursuit to be productive. And it really is something I've had to sit down and reevaluate, because it's not worth it for me to feel crappy as long as I'm getting things done. And I noticed that the huge amount that I get done, I probably haven't done it as well as I could if I just focused on a bit at a time. But how do we even gauge all that? Like, how do we know when it's too much, when we're too focused on being productive? For everybody it will be different, but maybe a good benchmark to use would be to look at that point where you can't think of anything else, where all you're doing is just worrying about being productive. You're forfeiting your health, you're forfeiting your mind, just everything. Basically, when you're obsessed. So after saying all this, how can we be more productive? I'm no expert on this and I'm still learning, but these are things that I'm reading about and things that have worked for me so far. I think in order to maximize your productivity potential, you have to get into some sort of routine. Now is probably a very good time to do that because we're all mostly in self-isolation and the urge to do things is just going out the window. I'll be the first person to tell you that. And by the way, I do want to say that there isn't anything wrong with not wanting to do anything in this quarantine self-isolation period. It's perfectly fine. But I also think that balance is good too. So I think getting into some sort of routine will help you, even for small things. So consider drawing up a small routine for yourself as you're locked in, and I think it might help you. Secondly, get rid of distractions. I mean, generally speaking, whenever anything isn't adding value to your life or is just wasting time, it might be helpful to just get rid of them, or at least limit those things. I think that way you'll be able to focus more on important things and just weed out all the noise and distraction. Thirdly, do a little a day. Like I said before, this is something I wholeheartedly subscribe to. I think just doing a bit a day will make you way more productive than trying to rush and do too many things at once, because this way you're able to dedicate more brain power to doing tasks well as opposed to just doing them all together and getting them done with. You may sometimes have to increase the amount you're doing to become more productive, but never stop because you don't think you're being productive enough. Just keep going. It will all add up as time goes on. And lastly, take a break. Take several breaks if you need them. And don't feel bad for taking a break when you need to. So that's it. My thoughts on productivity and how it manifests itself in my life. I hope it all kind of makes sense a bit. And I would love to hear your comments and thoughts. So please feel free to put them in the comment section below. I decided to start this series where I just talk about things that are on my mind and try to promote general, wider discussion on these things, because I think we all learn from each other and it's very cool to see what other people are thinking as well. So if you want to see these things as well as my other videos on my channel, consider subscribing and liking the videos so that you'll be able to see them when I put them out. And yeah, I hope you stick around.